Recently, I was scrolling through articles on Baseball Savant when one caught my eye. It was titled Breaking Down the Big 5 Shortstops, obviously talking about the top 5 free agent shortstops hitting the market this winter in Baez, Seager, Correa, Story, and Semien. What really stuck out to me in this article was the way that he broke down evaluating all these players, utilizing a lot of the advanced statistics and metrics that we have talked about on this channel in the past. So in today's video, I'm going to be recapping some of the main points of that article, as well as showcasing why the way it was broken down is a great way for you to learn how to evaluate players as well. So first and foremost, the article dives into each player's biographical information, which to a stat nerd at home may not be that important. But if you're talking to a front office of a team searching for a shortstop, all of this stuff matters big time. Our players listed here are all born within 4 years of each other. Not that big of a gap in the main scheme of things, but what an MLB team's front office sees is what length of contract they can offer to lock some of these guys down. For players like Correa and Seager, they have more time in the league left than Story, Baez, or Semien, and Story and Baez have a little bit more time than Semien as well. The idea being, the younger the player is, the closer to his prime he may be, and the longer a team can potentially hold on to him. If your team's in a position to continuously compete for the World Series within the next 5 years, and you have the money to afford paying for one of these guys, you're definitely going to want to lean towards one of the younger guys on our list. Another important detail that teams can evaluate when making a decision here is going to be each player's ability to stay healthy. An easy way to evaluate this is to see how many games each has played over the past few seasons. Each of these athletes have been in the league for at least the last 4 seasons, so that's what we're going to take as our sample size here. The interesting thing to note is that the younger players actually come in at 4th and 5th on this list. For Correa, he missed some time dealing with a fractured rib and nagging back problems over the past few seasons, but Seager underwent Tommy John surgery and fractured his hand on a hit by pitch. In comparing these two players' injuries, teams may see Correa's lingering back problems as more of a threat to his future performance than one of the sporadic injuries that have sidelined Seager. Another thing that's striking here is Semien's ability to stay on the field. Many think that the older you get, the more injury prone you become, but Semien is not only on the top of this list, but ranks in the top 5 of all players over the past 4 seasons. This is a huge plus for going after a guy like Semien, although his age may cap him a bit in terms of the length of contract and the amount. Now, let's hop on over to some of the past production stats. The article we're covering here did a great job on focusing on a player's production, utilizing offensive, defensive, and even a player's speed to help showcase the strengths and weaknesses of each athlete. I'm going to focus on a few other stats that weren't mentioned in the article, but if you want to see the examples that they used, go and check it out, links in the description. So we have our same 5 players. Let's begin by checking out what they can do on offense. The stats we are going to reference here are going to be OPS, weighted runs created plus, and WAR, F-WAR to be specific. There are definitely other stats out there that you can and should use when analyzing hitters. I just chose these 3 because we've covered all 3 of them on the channel in the past. Something to note, it's incredibly important to utilize a few different metrics when analyzing different facets of players' games, but we'll touch on this more in a minute. So let's take a look at each player's OPS and weighted runs created first. And of course, the first thing that sticks out to us is Seager is leaps and bounds beyond the rest of the group with the stick. And that's not surprising. That's what makes him such a sought-after free agent target, as he leads in both of our categories here. Story, who had a notably down year for his career standards, ranks last in both columns. What makes this interesting then is how the middle shakes out, as you may have situations in which your stats don't align. For example, Correa ranks 2nd on this list for weighted runs created plus, and 3rd for OPS. That's why taking a look at the whole picture is so important. If you just looked at OPS, you may think of these players different than if you look into their age, health, and multiple different hitting or even defensive stats. Speaking of all-encompassing statistics, let's take a look at each player's WAR this past season. Of course, we know that WAR takes into account a player's defensive ability as well, but it does a good job proving our point here a bit further. Although Marcus Semien ranks somewhere between 2nd and 3rd based on our other 2 stats, he ranks 1st in WAR, by a decent margin I might add. Again, you must take into account the full picture of a player when doing these evaluations. One just won't give you enough. So why is Semien's WAR so high, although his hitting stats rank among the upper middle of the pack? Let's take a look at each player's defensive ability to see if that can help us answer that question. To do so, we will be looking at each player's OAA, and before we move any further, yes, we will just be using one stat here to measure defense. I checked the others, and there isn't much of a discrepancy from what we found here, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to introduce you to a stat we haven't talked about on the channel before. OAA is kind of a counting stat in a way. If a play has a 75% chance of being made based off of previous StatCast data, a player will be rewarded 0.25 OAA if they make the play, and penalized 0.75 if they do not. Over a game, season, or career, each player's plays will then be summed up to determine if the player is good or bad defensively. Obviously, bigger positive numbers are good, and negative numbers are bad. If you want a full video on this in the future, definitely let me know in the comments down below. For our list here, we can see that Simeon has a pretty good OAA. Nothing too crazy, but ranks second on our list to an insane year out of Carlos Correa, who definitely earned that Platinum Glove award this season. Both Simeon and Baez are past Gold Glove winners, and you can see how Seager and Story's WAR were affected this season by a subpar defensive effort. And that's why you have to take into account all of this stuff if you're looking to sign any of these guys. Are you willing to sacrifice defensive ability for the bat of Seager? It probably depends on the way the rest of your team is constructed. Our last note on the pass production from this article includes our players' sprint speeds. This is definitely a trait you can look at, but may not hold up as much weight as some of the others that we've covered so far today. Average Mlb'S sprint speed is 27 feet per second, so Story, Baez, and Simeon rank above average mark, and Correa and Seager fall below. In evaluating pass production as a whole, you may have been immediately drawn to Seager's plate abilities, but in searching through the full abilities of these players, you've probably drawn a little closer to understanding what makes Correa the top pick on this list with his combo of defense and offense. To wrap things up, let's dive into each player's future projections. So many systems out there give us future projections on all kinds of stats, especially as we get closer to the season. For today's purpose, and in reference to the article that we're diving into, we are going to be utilizing Steamer's projected WAR for next season for each of our top 5 shortstops. Here it is, ranking Correa on top with a 5.1 WAR, and Baez on the bottom with a projected 2.0 WAR. If you think back to the things that we covered today, this is going to make a lot of sense. The combination of offense and defense, coupled with Correa's younger age, makes him the clear favorite of the group. Seager falls just short, because although he sports an elite bat and is just as young as Correa, his defensive skills are below average. For Simeon, teams will get a consistent bat that hasn't missed a ton of games over the past few seasons, but what they lack is years of team control due to his slightly older age. As for Story and Baez, you can see how they have shown flashes over the past few seasons across several different areas of their game, but the question mark on certain spots have them falling below our top 3 options here. Regardless, these are 5 very talented athletes that are going to absolutely get paid at the end of the day. The idea of this video was to break down the things that I liked about the way that you all should be looking at evaluating and comparing players. A lot more research goes into understanding this than just one stat alone, and you just can't evaluate them on one side of the ball either, once you start talking about which athlete you should sign for what amount and how long. Their defense, offense, and age are all going to help teams evaluate how much their talents would be worth on their roster, and that's a little insight in what it takes to see the process teams go through to make some of those decisions. I can't say enough good things about the MLB article I'm referencing today. Check it out, links as always are in the description down below. Thanks for tuning in to today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, please hit that subscribe button. If you want to keep learning more, here's a video and a playlist that I think you'd enjoy checking out. I'll catch you in the next one.